A decorated war hero. A white cop with a prejudice complex. A routine stop that turned into a nightmare of disrespect. He thought he was mocking a helpless old man. He never imagined he was insulting a legend, and the Pentagon was listening. Quick cut to a fighter jet soaring, a polished police badge, an older black man's stoic eyes in a rearview mirror, a smug white officer laughing. Meet Officer Chad Dawson, 28 years old, muscled, cocky, and with a badge that made him feel like a god. He patrolled the streets of Clarksville, a town bordering a major military base. He'd seen soldiers come and go. To him, they were just kids in costumes, especially the older ones, especially the black ones. Officer Dawson leaning against his cruiser, smirking as he watches cars enter the town, his eyes judgmental and cold. Now meet Captain Elijah Ace Jackson, retired, 65 years old. A man who had flown more combat hours than Dawson, had driven patrol shifts. Ace had seen things that would shatter Dawson's reality. But today, he was just a man on an errand, driving his old, impeccably maintained Ford Bronco to the VA hospital for a checkup. His medals were in a box in his attic. His uniform hung in a closet. His war was behind him, or so he thought. Ace Jackson, a strong-faced black man with a close-cropped gray flat-top and wise, tired eyes, wearing a simple veteran's baseball cap and a worn leather jacket. He checks his mirror, his movements precise and calm. He signaled, changed lanes with textbook precision, and drove toward the hospital. He never saw the predator in the black and white cruiser, lying in wait, the siren chirped behind him. Short, aggressive, A-side. I checked his speed. He was 5 under the limit. He signaled and pulled over onto the wide shoulder. Professional, calm. A lifetime of discipline took over. Officer Dawson took his time, finished his coffee, ran the plates. Clean, old truck, registered to an E. Jackson. He swaggered out of his car, adjusted his belt, tapped on the window with his flashlight. License and registration. His voice was a board draw. Ace handed them over. Afternoon, officer. Is there a problem? Dawson didn't look at the documents. He looked at the man. An old black man in an old truck. You were weaving back there. Pops, have you been drinking? Ace's jaw tightened slightly. No, sir, I was not weaving. Dawson smirked. I say you were. Step out of the vehicle. Let's do a field sobriety test. This wasn't about suspicion. This was about sport. Dawson leaning into the window, a condescending smirk on his face. Ace's calm, patient expression, a flicker of weariness in his eyes. Ace unbuckled, stepped out. He stood straight, shoulders back, a lifetime of military posture ingrained in him. Dawn circled him. All right, Pops. Heel to toe. Walk that line. Ace complied. His walk was perfect. Steady. Now. Stand on one leg. Count backwards from 30. Ace did it, without a wobble. Dawson's smirk faded. He was annoyed. This wasn't going how he wanted. He needed to win. All right, last one. Recite the alphabet backwards. Ace looked at him. Officer, that's not a standard field test, and you have no probable cause. Dawson's face flushed. Challenge. He stepped closer. I decide what's standard. Now, sing your ABCs backwards, or I'll take you in for obstruction. Ace took a slow breath. He looked past Dawson, at the horizon, a trick he'd learned to maintain composure under fire. Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T. His voice was steady, clear. He didn't miss a letter. He finished. Silence. Dawson was furious. His power play had failed. He needed to reassert control. To humiliate. He let out a slow, sarcastic clap. Well, look at that. The old man can still learn a trick. Ace didn't react. Dawson's eyes fell on the VA hospital placard on Ace's dashboard. Oh, I see. A trip to the VA. What? They are giving out medals for arthritis now. He laughed at his own joke. Ace's expression remained neutral, but his eyes turned to stone. I'd like to go about my business now, officer. Not so fast, Dawson said, his voice dropping. I think your truck's fit for inspection. Pop the hood. On what grounds? On the ground that I say so. Ace complied. The engine bay was spotless. Every wire, every hose, pristine. Dawson's frustration peaked. He reached into the engine bay and roughly yanked a sensor wire loose. Uh-huh. Looks like an emissions violation to me. That's fine. It was a blatant, disgusting setup. Ace finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. Son, you have no idea who you're talking to. Dawson leaned in, his face inches from Ace's. I'm talking to a broke, old and... He didn't finish the word. The sound of a phone ringing cut through the tension. It wasn't a regular ringtone. It was a distinct, piercing, sequential ring. The sound of a secure military line. It was coming from Ace's pocket. Extreme close-up on Dawson's smug, hateful face. On Ace's eyes, which have gone from weary to fiercely cold. The disconnected sensor, wire dangling. The phone rings with its unique, urgent tone. Dawson froze. That sound, he'd heard it in movies, but never in real life. Ace slowly, deliberately, pulled the phone from his pocket. It wasn't a smartphone. It was a heavy, black, satellite-enabled device. A secure line. He answered. Jackson. He listened for a moment, his eyes never leaving Dawson's. Yes, General. I'm currently detained. By a local law enforcement officer. A officer, he glanced at the nameplate. Dawson. He listened again. A faint, terrifying smile touched his lips. I'll put him on. Ace held out the phone. It's for you. Dawson stared at it like it was a live grenade. What? Who is it? The Pentagon. Dawson scoffed, but was weak. Nervous. Yeah, right. Hesitantly, he took the phone. Hello. The voice on the other end was ice. A voice used to command armies. Officer Chad Dawson. This is General John Briggs, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You are currently interfering with a highly decorated, retired United States Air Force captain who possesses a security clearance higher than you can comprehend. You will cease your harassment immediately. You will render any and all assistance required. And you will stand by. A team is en route to your location. Do you understand your orders, officer? Dawson's face went from red to white to a sickly shade of green. His hand trembled. The phone nearly slipped from his grasp. Yes, sir. I understand. The line went dead. Dawson stood there, paralyzed. The world had just fallen out from under him. The heavy military phone in Dawson's shaking hand. His face, drained of all blood and arrogance. Ace standing tall, a silent storm of dignity and power. In the distance, a new sound emerged. Not sirens. Something deeper, more powerful. The thunderous roar of helicopters. Too dark. Unmarked Blackhawks crested the horizon, moving fast. Low, directly toward them. Dawson looked up, his eyes wide with terror. Ace took a step forward. He plucked his phone from Dawson's limp hand. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of every mission he'd ever flown. You asked what they give out medals for at the VA. He leaned in. Come with me. I'll show you. The deafening roar of helicopter blades getting closer and closer. A sharp, intense musical sting. Then silence. The Blackhawks filling the sky. Dawson's utterly terrified face. Ace's calm, commanding expression. Text on screen. His secrets are arriving now. He mocked a hero. Now, he's going to meet his makers. The most powerful military on Earth is touching down in his backyard, and class is in session. The deafening roar of helicopter blades whipping up dust and gravel. A car door slamming. Ominous, pulsing music begins. The birds of prey were here. Not for him, for the legend he had disrespected. Officer Dawson's world was reduced to noise and fear. He thought the phone call was the end of it. He was wrong. It was just the beginning. The two Black Hawk helicopters hovering low. Men in tactical gear fast roping to the ground. Dawson shielding his face from the rotor wash. Pure terror in his eyes. The Black Hawks didn't land. They hovered, like avenging angels. From each bird, for figures fast roped to the ground. They hit the asphalt in perfect synchronization. They weren't a regular army. Their gear was black, devoid of insignia. Their movements were fluid, precise, and lethal. They fanned out, securing the perimeter without a word spoken. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a grimace that looked carved from stone, approached. He ignored the trembling Officer Dawson completely. He stopped in front of Ace and snapped a perfect razor-sharp salute. Captain Jackson, Sergeant Major Miller, Joint Special Operations Command. The General sent us. We are at your disposal, sir. Ace returned the salute with a casual precision that spoke of 1,000 such exchanges. Sergeant Major, the assistance is appreciated. Dawson could only stare. His brain refused to process what he was seeing. This wasn't a show of force. It was a standard retrieval protocol. For them, for him, it was the end of his world. The JSOC team moves with chilling efficiency. The Sergeant Major saluting Ace. Dawson looking small and insignificant next to the heavily armed operators. Sergeant Major Miller's eyes finally flicked to Dawson. The warmth he'd shown Ace was gone, replaced by a look of utter contempt. This is the local interference, sir? Ace nodded slightly. The one and only. Miller took a step toward Dawson. Dawson flinched. You will hand over your sidearm and your badge. Now. It wasn't a request. It was a global command. Dawson's hands shook as he fumbled with his holster. He handed over his weapon, his service pistol feeling like a worthless toy in the operator's gloved hand. Then his badge, the symbol of his power, now a token of his shame. One of the operators, a tech specialist, was already at the hood of Ace's Bronco. He glanced at the dangling sensor wire. He didn't say a word. He just pulled a multi-tool from his vest and reconnected it in 2 seconds flat. He gave Ace a thumbs up. All good, Captain. No damage done. The implication was clear. We saw what he did. We have it on satellite. It's all evidence now. Dawson felt a cold sweat drench his uniform. Miller's radio crackled. Sierra Major, this is Watchtower. We have a positive ID on the local unit. Officer Chad Dawson. Multiple prior complaints. Excessive force. Racial profiling. All buried by the precinct commander. Over. They weren't just here for this incident. They had done a full background check in the 3 minutes it took to fly here. Miller's eyes narrowed. Copy that, Watchtower. He looked back at Dawson. Seems you've been a naughty boy, officer. The tech operator fixing the engine. Miller listening to his radio. His expression growing darker. Dawson looked like he might be sick. Ace walked over to his truck and reached behind the driver's seat. He pulled out a small, worn leather bag. Not a suitcase. A military-issue go bag. Dawson had thought this was a broken old man. He was carrying a bag that contained things Dawson's security clearance wouldn't even allow him to dream about. Ace unzipped it. He didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a simple, framed photograph. He walked over to Dawson and held it up. It was a younger Ace in a flight suit, standing in front of a sleek, terrifyingly advanced stealth fighter jet. On his chest were rows of medals. But one stood out. The Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor. You asked what medals they give out, Ace said, his voice quiet but cutting through the helicopter noise. This one, they give it to you when you fly a solo rescue mission into a SAM battery to save a team of SEALs who were left for dead. The one next to it, that's for flying a plane with no hydraulics back to a carrier in a typhoon. He pointed to another. That one, that's for things I'm still not allowed to talk about. He lowered the photo, fixing Dawson with a gaze that had made generals tremble. They don't give these out for arthritis, son. The sergeant major handed Ace a tablet. On it was Dawson's entire life. His personnel file, his commendations, his complaints, his bank records. His secret social media accounts are filled with racist memes and rants. The general thought you might want to see this, sir, before we proceed. Ace scrolled through it. His face was a mask of cold disappointment. You could have been a good cop, Ace said, not looking up from the tablet. You scored top of your class in the academy. You had a chance to serve your community, to protect people. He looked up, his eyes boring into Dawson's soul. Instead, you chose to be a bully with a badge. Dawson found his voice, a pathetic whimper. I can explain. Explain what? Ace's voice sharpened. Explain why you felt the need to mock a man who served this country before you were born? Explain why you targeted me? Was it the color of my skin? The age of my truck? Ace took a step closer. You disrespected me. That I can handle. I've been disrespected by experts. But you disrespected the uniform I wore, the oath I took, the country I bled for. That is unforgivable. Narrator. Miller's radio crackled again. Sierra Major, be advised. We've hit a firewall. The precinct commander, Captain Monroe, has deep encrypted files. We need a level 8 override. Requesting permission from the captain. Ace nodded. Granted. A few seconds of silence. Then, Miller's operator spoke again, his voice tense. Sir, you're going to want to see this. Miller brought the tablet over. The screen showed financial records. Large, regular, untraceable deposits into Captain Monroe's account and into Dawson's from a shell corporation. The operator zoomed in. The corporation was a subsidiary of a larger company, Vance Security Solutions. Ace's blood ran cold. Silas Vance, the notorious billionaire private military contractor, a man who made his fortune off war and was often accused of starting them. Dawson, Ace's voice was like steel. What is your connection to Vance Security? Dawson's eyes went wide with new, deeper terror. I don't know what you're talking about. He was lying. Ace could see it. Vance's tentacles were everywhere, even in this small-town precinct. They weren't just cleaning up a racist cop. They had stumbled into a conspiracy. The mission had just changed. This was bigger than one bad apple. This was a rotten orchard. Ace looked at Miller. Sergeant Major, we need to take this up the chain. Now. Already done, sir. The general is activating a full audit of all Vance contracts. This just went from a personnel issue to a national security briefing. He turned to his team. Pack it up. We're moving the captain to a secure location. The operators moved with renewed urgency. Dawson was read his rights by a JSOC operative, a surreal, humiliating experience. He was placed in the back of his own cruiser, cuffed. The hunter was now the prisoner. As Ace was escorted toward one of the Black Hawks, he stopped. He looked back at the cruiser, at Dawson's shattered face. You thought you were powerful because you had a badge and a gun, Ace said, his voice carrying over the rotor wash. True power doesn't come from what you carry. It comes from what you're willing to defend. He turned and climbed aboard the helicopter. The door slid shut. In the air, en route to a secure DoD facility, Ace was on a secure line with General Briggs. Elijah, we've got a problem. The general's voice was grim. The moment we started poking into Vance's finances, we triggered a digital tripwire. He knows we're looking. What does that mean, John? It means Silas Vance doesn't get investigated. He eliminates problems. And he just classified you as one. As the general spoke, Ace's secure tablet lit up. A red alert. A facial recognition hit. From a traffic camera a mile from their current position. It was a photo of a man. Cold eyes. A severe face. Leaning against a black sedan. The assassin. He was looking directly at the camera, as if he knew they were watching. And he was smiling. A high-priority alert siren from the tablet. The intense music cuts abruptly. The assassin's face on the tablet screen. His chilling, knowing smile. Text on screen. The contract is issued. The target was identified. The hunter had become the hunted. Ace Jackson survived wars to come home to a new kind of battlefield. And the enemy was a ghost with unlimited resources. Silas Vance had issued a contract, and his favorite weapon was already on the move. The assassin's cold, smiling face on the tablet screen. Ace's grim expression in the dim light of the helicopter. The Black Hawk didn't go to a military base. It descended onto a secluded, state-of-the-art safe house, a nondescript cabin deep in a protected forest, surrounded by a perimeter of motion sensors and hidden cameras. Sergeant Major Miller's team moved with practiced efficiency, securing the area. You'll be safe here, Captain, Miller said, his voice a low rumble. This place is off every map. Vance's people would need a miracle to find it. Ace nodded, but his eyes scanned the tree line. He'd spent a lifetime trusting his instincts. And right now, every instinct was screaming. This felt like a trap. Too quiet. Too isolated. Inside, the cabin was a fortress disguised as a retreat. Monitors showed every angle of the forest. Ace's military file was pulled up on a large screen. His service record. His missions. His medals. Miller whistled lowly. "Captain, the things you've done. It's an honor, sir." Ace didn't smile. "The past doesn't stop a bullet, Sergeant Major." He pointed to the screen. "Vance didn't just get lucky. He knew who I was. Dawson was a puppet. This was a hit from the start. But why? What does a billionaire arms dealer want with a retired pilot?" The tech operator, a woman named Reyes, spoke up from her station. "Sir, I'm digging into Vance's known associates. Cross-referencing with your last active deployment." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Your final mission, Operation Steel Talon. You flew covert ops over the Kyrgyzstan border, gathering intel on weapon shipments." Ace's face darkened. "I remember. The intel we gathered was supposed to lead to sanctions. It was buried instead. I was forced into early retirement." Reyes nodded, her eyes wide. "It was buried because it led right to him. Silas Vance was the one supplying both sides of that conflict. Your mission would have exposed him. You were a loose end he thought he'd tied up years ago." She pulled up a blurred satellite photo. It showed a man in an airfield, overseeing the loading of missile systems. The man was younger, but unmistakable. Silas Vance. Dawson wasn't just a racist cop, Ace said, the pieces clicking into place. He was Vance's local asset. His job was to harass, discredit, or disappear anyone who might be a problem. He targeted me because Vance told him to. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. It wasn't just about one traffic stop. It was about a billionaire covering up war crimes. And Ace was the one man who could prove it. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the cabin. A soft, persistent ping. Perimeter breach. South sector. The monitors flickered. One by one, the exterior camera feeds turned to static. "What's happening?" Miller barked, grabbing his rifle. "It's a jammer." Reyes yelled, frantically typing. "A powerful military-grade one. They're here." The lights in the cabin flickered and died. The hum of the generators ceased. Total silence. They were blind and deaf. In the darkness, Ace was perfectly calm. He'd been here before. "They're not coming in loud," he whispered. "They're coming in quiet, to make it look like an accident." He moved to a weapons locker the team had brought in. He wasn't a pilot at that moment. He was a soldier. He checked a rifle with muscle memory. Miller looked at him, impressed despite the circumstances. "Where did you learn to do that, sir?" "The same place I learned that Vance doesn't play fair," Ace said, slamming a magazine home. "They're not jamming the old landline. The hard line. In the basement, there was a single hardened phone line connected directly to the Pentagon. A relic. A failsafe. I need to get to it. Call this in." Miller nodded. "Reyes, with me, will cover the captain." They moved toward the basement door. As Miller reached the handle, Ace's hand shot out, stopping him. "Wait." Ace pointed to the floor. A hair-thin wire, almost invisible, ran across the bottom of the doorframe. A trigger. The basement was already wired. It was a trap within a trap. They retreated from the door. They were surrounded, cut off, and the enemy was toying with them. Ace's mind raced. Vance didn't just want him dead. He wanted him discredited. A shootout at a secret DoD safe house? A retired officer in the JSOC team going rogue? It would be buried forever, and Vance would walk away clean. Suddenly, the cabin's internal comm system crackled to life. Not their frequency. An outside feed. A smooth, cultured voice filled the room. "Silas Vance. Captain Jackson. Or should I say Ace? A pleasure to finally speak to you. I've admired your work for so long." Ace didn't respond. He located the security camera in the ceiling and looked directly into it. Vance chuckled. Oh, I see you. I see everything. The safe house? I helped design the security system. A lucrative DoD contract. I always build in a back door. The monitors suddenly flickered back on, but they didn't show the forest. They showed live feeds from inside the cabin. They were being watched from within their own walls. You have something that belongs to me, Captain. The raw data from Steel Talon. You thought you hid it well. But nothing is ever truly deleted. Ace's blood ran cold. The data, he had kept a single, encrypted copy. An insurance policy. He'd hidden it in the one place no one would look. His old Bronco. You're wondering how I know, Vance purred. Your friend Dawson was kind enough to have your vehicle impounded and brought to a secure facility. My facility. My technicians are dismantling it as we speak. On the screen, a live feed appeared. It showed Ace's beloved Bronco in a sterile garage. Men in lab coats were using power tools to tear apart. They were minutes from finding the data drive. Ace's last piece of evidence. The only thing that could put Vance away forever. It's over, Captain, Vance said. But I'm a reasonable man. Surrender yourself to my associate outside. Come quietly, and I'll let your JSOC friends live. Ace looked at Miller and Reyes. Their faces were set. They would never surrender, but they would die for him. He couldn't allow that. He made a decision. He looked back at the camera. You want the data, Vance? It's not in the truck. Vance's smile faltered. Don't play games with me. Old man, I encrypted it with a dual-key algorithm. One key is physical. The other is biological. What does that mean? It means, Ace said, a slow smile spreading on his face. The other half of the key is my retinal scan. You need me alive, and you need me willing, or the data corrupt itself forever. It was a bluff, a magnificent, desperate bluff. The line was silent for a long moment. Vance was calculating, weighing the risk. Fine, Vance hissed, his voice losing its polished edge. New deal. You have 1 hour. Bring yourself and your eyes to these coordinates. Alone, or I burn the safe house to the ground with everyone in it. The monitors went black. The coordinates flashed on the screen for a few seconds before vanishing. A remote airstrip, 50 miles away. An obvious trap. Miller immediately protested. Sir, you can't. We'll find another way. But Ace was already moving. There is no other way. This is the mission. It always has been. He grabbed a go bag. I need a vehicle. Reyes pointed to a key. Garage. There's an old Jeep. Ace headed for the garage door, ignoring Miller's pleas. He had to do this alone. He opened the garage door. The Jeep was there. But sitting in the driver's seat was the assassin. He held a pistol fitted with a silencer. He wasn't aiming it at Ace. He was aiming at a small, beeping device wired to the ignition. A bomb. The assassin smiled his cold, dead smile. Captain Jackson, he said, I'm here to give you a ride. Vance doesn't like to be kept waiting. The low, persistent beep of the bomb. The intense music cuts to a heart-pounding thump. The assassin in the driver's seat, the bomb clearly visible. Ace frozen in the garage doorway. Text on screen, the final flight. He's walked into the trap. His only way out is sitting next to a bomb, and a man with nothing to lose. The low, persistent beep of the bomb. A single, racing heartbeat thumps in time with it. Then a slow, tense drumbeat begins. Narrator, voiceover, a grave whisper. The bomb was a heartbeat. The assassin was a shadow. And Ace Jackson was out of moves. He had flown into canyons of fire for his country. But this was the most dangerous mission of his life. And for the first time, he had everything to lose. Extreme close-up on the bomb's LED counter. Then on the assassin's cold, dead eyes. Then on Ace's face, set in stone. The assassin's smile didn't waver. Get in, Captain. We're on the clock. And not just because of this. He gestured with the gun toward the passenger seat. Ace's mind calculated the variables. Distance to the assassin. Type of explosive. The team behind him. There was no play. No heroic move. Only compliance. He slowly walked around and got into the passenger seat. The Jeep smelled of sweat and gun oil. The assassin kept the gun trained on him as he expertly backed the Jeep out, navigating the wooded path with unnatural calm. "You know," the assassin said, his voice conversational, "I read your file. Very impressive. A shame to waste such talent." Ace didn't look at him. He watched the trees. "Vance's money must be good, to make you betray your country." The assassin actually laughed. A dry, hollow sound. "Country? I don't have a country. I have an employer, and he pays me not to ask questions. Unlike you, you asked the wrong one years ago." They reached the main road and turned toward the remote airstrip. Ace knew he had to keep him talking. Steel to loan. The weapons. It was always Vance. "Of course it was," the assassin said. "War is a business. Peace is bad for profit. Your mission was about to expose a very profitable enterprise. You and that SEAL team you pulled out." Ace's blood went cold. "The SEALs? What about them?" The assassin glanced at him, a flicker of genuine amusement in his dead eyes. "You didn't know?" Vance couldn't have loose ends. "The team you saved, their extraction helicopter, had an unfortunate mechanical failure over the ocean. No survivors. Vance made sure of it." The words hit Ace like a physical blow. The men he had risked everything for. The mission that earned him his Medal of Honor. It was all for nothing. They had died anyway. Because of him. Because he had gathered the evidence. The weight of it crushed him, his hands clenched into fists. The assassin saw it. Ah, there's the emotion. The great Ace Jackson, finally feeling something. "Don't worry, you'll see them soon." The remote airstrip came into view. A single private jet waited, its engines whining. Silas Vance stood at the bottom of the stairs, phone to his ear, a triumphant smirk on his face. This was it, the end of the line. The assassin brought the Jeep to a stop. "Out!" Slowly. Ace got out, his hands raised. Vance ended his call and spread his arms. "Captain, so glad you could make it. Now, the retinal scan, if you please. Let's make this civil." Ace took a step forward, then another. He was 10 feet from Vance. The assassin was behind him, gun aimed at his back. Ace looked Vance dead in the eye. The data was never in the truck. Vance's smirk faded. "What? And it doesn't need a retinal scan." "You lied to me? I learned from the best," Ace said. He took another step, and then he did the one thing neither man expected. He smiled, and he said 2 words into the crisp air. "Light him up." From the tree line, a dozen laser sights appeared. Red dots danced across Vance's chest, his forehead. They painted the assassin. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "FBI, drop your weapons. Get on the ground. Now!" Sergeant Major Miller and his JSOC team emerged from hiding. They had never been in the safe house. They had been one step ahead the whole time. The bomb in the Jeep was a fake, a prop. The entire drive was a ruse, to get a confession. And it worked. Vance and the assassin were taken down in seconds. Cuffed. Read their rights. The takedown was clean. Efficient. But as Ace stood there, watching the billionaire being put into a FBI van, he felt no victory. Only a hollow ache. Miller approached him. "We got him, sir. We got everything. His confession about the SEALs is on the recording. It's over." Ace looked at the sergeant major, his eyes filled with profound, weary sadness. "Is it? How many more are out there? How many Vances are making money off the blood of better men? How many Dawsons are doing their dirty work?" He turned to face the young JSOC team. "The lesson isn't that we caught one bad guy. The lesson is that the battle never ends. The uniform doesn't make you a hero. The badge doesn't make you righteous." His voice grew stronger, carrying across the tarmac. "It's the choices you make when no one is watching. It's remembering that the person you're swearing at in traffic might be the person who fought for your freedom to be a jerk." He walked over to where Vance was being processed. "You thought power was money," Ace said to him. "But real power is integrity. And you are bankrupt." Vance said nothing. He just stared ahead, his empire crumbling around him. Weeks later, a private ceremony was held at Arlington. For the SEAL team lost years ago. Their families finally had answers. Finally had justice. Ace Jackson stood at attention, alone in his dress uniform, his chest full of medals. He saluted the row of headstones, not as a hero, but as a brother, a man who had carried their memory for years, a man who finally found peace. As he turned to leave, a young boy, the son of one of the SEALs, ran up to him. He looked up at Ace, his eyes wide. "Are you the pilot? The one who tried to save my dad?" Ace knelt down, his eyes glistening. "I am." The boy didn't say anything. He just hugged him, tight. And in that moment, Ace understood. The mission wasn't a failure. The fight wasn't in vain. The hard lesson was for everyone. For Dawson. For Vance. For him. True strength isn't about winning. It's about getting back up. Every time. And continuing the fight. Ace Jackson, in his dress uniform, walking away from the graves at Arlington. The sun sets behind him, casting a long shadow. They mocked his age. They disrespected his skin. They underestimated his resolve. But they could never break his spirit, because a warrior's value isn't measured by the enemy he defeats, but by the peace he protects long after the battle is over. Final text on screen. The greatest weapon against injustice isn't a gun. It's a memory and the will to fight for it. Ace Jackson.